Greetings, patriots. I know that term can be offensive to some people, but I don't know what to call you. If you want open and honest elections, you're my friend, and I call you a patriot. I'm Jay Delancey, one of the co-founders of the Voter Integrity Project, North Carolina, and we started this organization. I started it with a data scientist named John Pizzo, and John is a quality control engineer who knows his stuff. And I won't go into too much detail there because you can click on our website, voterintegrityproject.com, and you can look at the About key. Click on About and you'll see what you need to know. So I'm giving you this introduction as a way to potentially encourage you to take a look at being an observer for your election, but not just any observer. Be a trained observer who actually knows what to do when things go sideways. Now, typically, I can't slam the parties too much, but I will sometimes. As a general rule, Democrats hate us and Republicans don't trust us. So there, we got that out of the way. We care about fraud, and if you do a deep dive on our website, you'll see that the only prosecutions we've ever managed to actually get and confirm were Republicans who were prosecuted. So the spin could come around that, well, they hate Republicans. Not true at all. Our problem is what we've learned over the years about voter fraud is to get it confirmed, you have to get it all the way through the process. It has to be documented. It has to be, the Board of Elections has to investigate it. Then they have to make a referral to the prosecutorial side. Generally, it's the district attorney. District attorney is a politician. And what we have found is, in our most highlighted case, it's a sitting U.S. attorney that we don't like. The guy was a Charlotte area DA, a very political DA. Politically connected, and he got a job as a U.S. attorney. But when he was a DA at Charlotte, he would not prosecute our vote fraud. We confirmed criminal referrals. We confirmed they went to him. He just wouldn't do it. He made excuses, but a lot of excuses. At the end of the day, none of them were satisfactory. I'm not going to make his argument for you or for him, but I will say that he had discretion. And our final weapon we played was we exercised basically, depending on what state you're in, North Carolina has, in political area, it has a mechanism like a writ of mandamus where you can you can embarrass him at least, which is about all we could do. And we did that. And he still got the job as a U.S. attorney, regrettably, so great. Yeah, if you're going to make somebody mad in a high place. So I've made a U.S. attorney mad at me. That said, we love our U.S. attorney in Eastern North Carolina a lot. Bobby Higdon, he's a real deal. So that's not the bad guy. At any rate, the reason we're doing this series is so you can learn to be the person at the bottom of that chain of information. It starts with documentation. In the past, the political parties have done a crappy job of teaching you to document and how to document. I hear they're doing better, but I don't know for sure. So we're going to do it our way. And the party is not responsible for what we teach you. And if you follow our advice, you are responsible for what we teach you. You will own this problem. You can't blame us, but we're going to give you some tips. You can choose to use them or choose not to. Now, who are we? You read our About page. I'm going to make a lot of reference to video clips that you'll see in the course of these modules on observer training. Now, we get our sources from people who've seen stuff. Now, I've gone across this state so many times I lost count. I'm not going to brag about some number, but I'll just say I put a lot of miles on my car, probably on, one car, at least 250,000 miles before the dang odometer broke. Piece of junk car. So it quit at 299,999, and they just don't make cars like they used to. The car's still fine, but that odometer is a piece of junk. So That's a Toyota Corolla, you know, piece of junk. Anyway, during that time, I've talked, listened, I've spoken to audiences, and people will come up afterwards and start telling me stories. And as I started getting these stories, I realized I better record these. These are important. I mean, some of them were wild-eyed, like, oh, I told you, I seen this, I overheard that. But occasionally I mean, get people who actually were the eyewitness to an event, to something that happened. Maybe it was you. Maybe you've never told anybody, or maybe you told a lot of people, but it never got to me. I collect stories like that, and I'm going to use some of them in here in this film. Now, the fraud deniers will go, well, that's just anecdotal. Well, there's a lot of reasons for that, mainly because nobody's documenting this kind of crime, number one. Now, anecdotal, if you think about research in the big picture, you start with data. You start with individual data points, maybe on a graph. You know, you got a point here and a point there. I had a friend who worked on the free electron laser, or Star Wars, back in the day. He was at Brown doing graduate work on that project. He said if they got two dots on the same graph, they would draw their line and start working it because they were excited. It might be a trend, but it's not a trend if you get the dots and you don't draw the line. You don't try and connect the dots. You don't try and see the bigger picture. This is our problem with election officials. Either they don't know or don't care about that bigger picture. Generally, they don't care, but I think a lot of them, some of them don't. They don't know, and they don't want to know, and that's why they fight us. That's why they don't want nonpartisan observers, which North Carolina does not allow. There are about 20 states that do, but North Carolina is not among them. So depending on the laws of your states, if you're watching this video outside of North Carolina, well, lucky you, or I'm sorry. But I'm going to mainly talk about North Carolina law. But again, I'm not a lawyer and I'm not practicing law. But the fact is, election law is the guidelines for how the people get to conduct their election. So the people look at the law and they say, hey, you're breaking the law. And they go, no, I'm not. Yes, you are. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. You play a role in that. Elections are yours. They're not the politicians. They're not election administrators' laws. They're not the legislatures. They're not the courts. They are your laws. If you are a lawful citizen with your right to vote, these laws are yours. We are going to teach you how you can take those laws back and use them. Because right now, people I don't trust, who will lie about all kinds of stuff, will tell you there is no vote fraud. They're very careful now. They say, we've seen no evidence of fraud. That's true. It's because they don't allow people like you to get into the polls and document it. But North Carolina law allows you to go in. The bad news is you have to go in through your party. So we're going to offer some supplemental training. You have to get approved by your party before you can do anything. Any training they offer, any training your county offers, take it. The more you know, the better you are. We're offering you what to do when things go sideways. Now, so I'm gonna show you some things later that could make you very upset, and we'll tell you a lot of war stories. But I'm going to close this section out with a short tutorial on your brain and what happens when your brain gets excited. So if you've heard this before, well, good for you. Okay, I borrowed this information from Dr. Tim Daughtry, the author of a great book called Waking the Sleeping Giant. Tim also has workshops that he actually uses to pay the bills, and I was privileged enough to sit in one of his workshops. You might want to listen. The people in that workshop were corporate up-and-comers that their corporations had identified for this training. And it's $3,500. So if I told you this training is worth $3,500, would you listen? Okay, I'm going to teach you about half of part of what he told a lot in that 3.5 day period. I'm going to teach you some of that right now. And I used to teach it in my public speaking classes for community colleges and wherever else I teach. I've taught lots of different college settings. However, I'm teaching you now. So this is what we have, and it's a section on your brain and how it works when your emotions get in the way. Now, first, what are emotions? Now, I'm not talking about, there's feelings and there's emotions. And scientists have figured out that we need these. For the longest time, people on the right have made fun of people on the left for going with too much on their feelings. And I stand corrected. I used to be one of those people who'd make fun of them, but we need all of these. And if you don't believe me, let's look at sadness. This is innate, written into our root programming, that sadness is a survival skill we actually need. If we don't have any of these things, if we're missing any of these, we are a problem. We have to have them all. We have to have them in balance. Here's the sadness one real quick that Tim taught in the class. A baby bear, a cub, gets separated from its mother, is lost, and it starts whimpering because it's sad, and the mama bear comes back. God help you if you're between the baby bear and the mama bear, because mama bear, what? Mama grizzly, the Sarah Palin jokes. The mama bear is going to find her baby bear. The sadness that baby bear is experiencing is what saves that bear's life. So I'm not knocking these things, and hopefully while I'm rambling, you're able to read these. The point is, we need these, and we have these. You're going to probably, the two you're going to deal with a lot as an election observer is fear and anger. Those are going to be your demons that you're going to have to slay, because these bad boys are going to try to do something we call limbic hijacking. Now, let me talk about the limbic just a little bit. By the way, I said I'm not a lawyer. I'm also not a clinical psychologist, but I have friends who are smart. I have friends who are lawyers. I have friends who are clinical psychologists. And I teach this in public speaking about getting over your fear of public speaking and controlling your fear when you're in there. Now, the limbic lobe is kind of a little nugget in the middle. It's right at it's a really funny little deal, because in your fetal development, I know if you're, I don't want to offend you if you don't believe in life before birth, but I do. And as you're being developed in utero, one of the first parts of your brain that show up is the root programming module that controls the development. It's the umpire, the referee. It's the project planner for this thing called you. And it works inside of your brain, and it's like, all right, today we're going to grow hair. Okay, we'll leave that one. Bad example. Today we're going to breathe. Today we're going to blink. Today we're going to learn how to sweat. All these things that are controlled by the limbic lobe. It kind of controls, it's the root program of your operating system. Now, later on, as you get really smart and more developed, that mode is like, okay, here you are, a fully functioning adult. The limbic lobe says, hey, blink. You go, okay. And you don't even think about it. It's something that's so down. In fact, the limbic doesn't really have a job except just boring maintenance until something goes wrong. That something going wrong is those things I mentioned a minute ago. It's these things: fear, anger, sadness, playfulness. That's not going wrong, actually, but still, it's part of our being. Caring, seeking, those things. When you start doing that, the limbic gets involved in it. You play with your dog. The dog gets too rough because he's so excited. That's his limbic kicking in, and he's just, having a great time. Now you got to calm the dog down. Good luck with that. Yeah, I'm a lab owner, so I know all about that. Our problem here is you're at the polls and you get angry. Now, what they found, whoever they are, they're wizards of smart. They've had, I had this slide somewhere, but not here. There are shots they've done, brain scans of people in different states of being, like they're sitting there reading a crossword puzzle and working through a puzzle. Their frontal lobe, which I think is the green part here, the frontal lobe is really kicking in. Yeah, it says frontal lobe green. That's the front end. It is the last to develop in our physiology. The limbic is the first, and it helps kind of referee how the rest of the body develops. The frontal is the last, and part of the reason Well, in a sane America, when you had to be 21 to vote, part of the reason was because our brains are still developing till our mid 20s. I think now it's probably mid 30s the way things are going, but that's just editorial. The point is, your brain develops. It's the last thing to develop. That frontal lobe is very important, and it's still developing as you're learning stuff. And then at the end of life, it's the first to go. That's why old people like me will say things that are inappropriate, or will. I remember George Herbert Walker Bush, the late president, as he got later in life, the nurses, there were stories about the nurses going, wow, stay away from that. He is a dirty old man. What he had done was the frontal lobe had gone away, so his judgment was gone. Because that frontal lobe is the highest order thinking you have. It's your judgment. It's what you're using probably while you're watching this video, unless you get mad at me and then that's something else. The point is, you need that part of your brain to work. You need it badly. And when it doesn't work, things go sideways. As a poll observer, or even as an employee, and by the way, I'd recommend this film for employees too. Even as an employee, you're going to see things that are going to make you mad or make you scared, or a combination of both. And then when that happens, you become degraded in your ability to operate, your operability, as I was going to say, a little military jargon. Okay, so that said, intense thinking, your frontal lobe is red hot and your limbic is cold blue. We're talking infrared heat signature. Your limbic's chilling. Hey, I'm just living cool. Yeah. Hey, breathe. Hey, take a breath. If you ever come out of surgery, you know how important that is. You need to breathe. Your limbic is managing all that, and they have to wake it up when you come out of surgery. And typically day to day, your frontal lobe is where the action is. Now, when you get upset and anger and fear and those emotional areas, your frontal lobe turns blue. What that means is the blood is being redirected. Where to? It's going to the limbic. Now, that goes too far. Adrenaline will cause that. Anger, it's fueled by adrenaline. Drip, drip, drip. That adrenaline gets squirted in. According to Tim, it takes about 4 hours for adrenaline to work its way out of your system. So you become mission ineffective. You're degraded if you're angry. If you're losing it, you've got problems. And so what I want to talk to you about a little bit is how to control that, how to manage it. And I have an animated slide I want to show you in order to do it. Okay, we're going to call this the threat response cycle. Okay, so let's say what happens. Here you are. Okay, this stuff in the blue block is kind of when you have your stuff under control, when nobody knows you're upset, nobody knows you're mad, and you seem to be functioning normally. Then we have this point called the line of awareness. That line, people who know you well might have a lower line where they see when you're angry quicker. Maybe if you have a spouse, you know when that spouse is getting mad before they even know it. Yeah, it's that kind of thing. But at this point, that line of awareness is where your opponent sees that you are upset. Now, in this case, vote fraud. The first example we're going to show you, if you're following the videos in line, it involves pieces of paper. Voters who walk in with a piece of paper and they don't seem to know their name, and they're reading their name off a piece of paper. Okay, so this is the way it works. This voter comes in and pulls out a piece of paper and starts reading it, and you're like, whoa, that ain't right. That's not right. This makes me mad. I don't like this. And then your emotions build to a climax. You start talking to the election officials. You complain, maybe the chief judge. Hey, chief, this guy's doing something wrong. This guy, look at that. Look what he's doing. Look what he's doing. You got to stop him. You're getting madder and madder. And the chief judge will argue with you, because not that the chief judge is evil, but the chief judge, A, wants to keep his job, and 2, the chief judge has to respect the rights of the voter. So there's a balance there. We're not saying everybody who reads their address off a piece of paper is evil. All of us have moved somewhere and read their address. Lest we forget, these people are voting. They've lived at that address, presumably for more than 30 days. That's what the law requires, unless they're voting same-day registration, which North Carolina is cursed with, but that's a whole nother story. Typically, your voter who walks in is registered and they've been there a long time. So why are they reading their address? Okay, that's a problem, but it's nothing to get upset about. Don't get upset. Don't go to the judge, running to the judge, screaming about it, because the judge can't do anything. You can, but you've got to keep your head. If you don't, let's follow this scenario through. What happens is you get mad. Then at a certain point, you scream at the judge. We call that the boom. You just like, you verbally vomit, you punch them, maybe it's not the judge, but your emotions hit a peak and you do something very regrettable. In a marriage situation is, you're just like your mother, or something like that, something that you just go, okay, now I'm going to leave. I'm going to go to my room. I'm going to rethink my life. Well, you can't do that. You're an observer at the poll. You're probably going to get kicked out at that point. If you're at the polls and you have a big boom where it's above the line of awareness, they're going to use that against you to get you out of there. They don't need the trouble. Who can blame them? It's hard enough to run an election without some idiot in there losing their head and acting like a fool. So it's on you. If you lose your head there and start acting foolish and screaming at people, I got nothing to do with it. I teach you this training and hope you can keep your head. Things are going to happen there. If you're there long enough and if you're the right precinct, things are going to happen that will make you go boom. So we're going to teach you some ways to manage that. Because after that, it's all cool. Your emotions begin returning to normal. Everybody's happy and you're back to that steady state of happiness. Of course, our problem is you're now out in the parking lot. Maybe you're still mad. You're on the phone calling the lawyer saying, I got kicked out. Baby, it's on you. If you lose your mind there, it is on you. So the question is, what are you going to do? You're going to break the law? What are you going to do? Now, there's things you can do, and I will recommend some things, but that's for another day. We're not going to do that now. I'm talking about controlling your emotions as an observer. So let's review this scenario on a happier way. And it's a matter of managing your emotions. And the happiness here is if you catch it early enough, there is a way to mitigate your emotions. And we'll be applying those emotions. Spoiler alert, breathe and document. You don't want to get mad before you document what you're doing, because it's hard. Believe me, when I'm scared, like if I'm in the middle of a legislative hearing and people are saying things I don't like and I'm about to speak, I'm trying to write a speech, I can't even read my own handwriting because my hand's shaking too much. Yeah, I love doing it. I love speaking to them, but I get nervous. And when I'm nervous, I can't make my pen work because there's too much adrenaline in me. That's you. You don't want too much adrenaline to hijack your day as an observer. So you've got to maintain a steady state. How? Breathe. Don't forget to breathe. I'm not talking breathe. I have a friend who says, breathe. And I'll go, I'm breathing. No. That's called hyperventilating. Breathe. Breathe like you're in a yoga class. Nice, long breaths through your nose. Don't do it in a dramatic way where they see you doing it. Don't do it like I just did it. You don't want your opponent to see you. Mom's mad. Oh gosh, look at her. She's breathing again. You don't want that. Just be calm, smile. Just take your notes. Don't forget to breathe. You're breathing, and I can't tell you why. I'll tell you why in a moment as a motivational why to do it. But your goal is the threat appears, you see the person, you start breathing, your emotions build. The boom is below the level of awareness. You go, God, this is a real deal. This is fraud. You breathe because you know what to do. Unlike all the training you've had in the past about being an observer, you didn't know what to do at that point because the people who taught it they either didn't believe or didn't want to believe that this kind of thing happens. I will show you video that will make you mad, and you put yourself in that person's position. You may even get mad. Of course, I think in every single case, they did the wrong thing. Why? Well, you'll see. As we go through this course, you'll see why. They did the wrong thing. I did the wrong thing. I'll tell you my war story at some point too, and I was angry. Oh gosh, I acted the fool. I started yelling at some people, and it was the end of my shift. I didn't care, but I sure wish I had kept my frontal lobe because I would have done something different. But in this case, in the graphic you're looking at, your boom happens below that level of awareness, meaning you've kept your cool. So your emotions return and you're not shaking, you're not red faced, you're not angry. You're pretty cool and you're moving on. You're documenting and moving on to the next thing. It is just documentation. Sometimes you might have to make a phone call, but you're well on your way. I should back up here and stress this line called sense of purpose. This is why you're here. You want to gather the kind of information that is critical to getting good policy with regard to election law. You are the data point. You are our first line, our first entry point of data. You're critical. I can't have you getting angry and acting like a fool. So be cool, document, document, document. Sometimes, yeah, you have to call your attorney. The party will tell you when to call the attorney. I might mention somewhere in here about that, but I'm talking about documentation and how you can document effectively. But for now, this is the response cycle. You're a happy camper, did a good job. Okay, here are some terms. These are some tips of when you're angry. And the workshop that we went through had a lot of this in it, teaching us. First, I won't tell you what they did, but they did something to get us emotionally scared, angry. I won't describe what the emotion was, just to say that after that, when we calmed down, he said, tell me what you were feeling. And people kept saying what they thought. He said, no, what were you feeling? This is very hard to do this when you're instantly scared, instantly angry. Because let's face it, fear is a good motivator. You're walking down the wrong side of town and your fear starts kicking in. You should probably pay attention. I'm getting scared here. No, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong here. I'm going to ignore my feelings, ignore my emotions, and soldier on. And you're going to be dead. So you got to be careful about that. Pay attention to the physiological tips that your limbic is trying to let you know, hey, dude, I'm squirting adrenaline right now. And if you don't pay attention, I'm going to keep squirting until you pay attention. You do not want your limbic to squirt that adrenaline, too much of it. They're squirting some already. You don't want them to squirt too much, because if they do, your frontal lobe is going to shut down and you are going to act like the fool. You're going to catch the boom, if you know what I mean. Okay, these are some tips. Hopefully while I'm rambling, you've been reading them. Your jaw tightens. Like, pay attention to that. Your arms get tight. Your face gets red. Your chest tight. Your breathing becomes shallow. Physical shaking. It's too late. If you're physically shaking, it's too late. You probably already lost it. You need to step away. Relationally, I would say you would tell the person, I need a timeout. I need to process these things. So give me some time here. Let me think. You need to de-escalate the situation. You want to do it in such a way you're not getting, I won't go more into relationships, though there is some bleed over in there. But as far as a poll observer goes, you need to step out. Be polite as you can to that chief judge, because that chief judge is the captain of the ship. And if you've ever been on a cruise liner or been in the Navy, which I have not been in the Navy, but I had a lot of friends who did, that captain can kick you off his boat. That captain can court-martial you if you're under his command or her command. They've got a lot of power. That captain, as far as that boat goes, that captain is the hand of God. And the rest of the military, think of it as the commander. That captain is your assigned commander. And on election day at those polls, the chief judge is the commander. The commander typically is controlled by the governor's party, but sometimes you get reasonable people there, and sometimes you get creeps. So I can't help you there. Well, I can in one way. I'm going to teach you how to navigate when you got a creep. When they're cooperative, reasonable people, you're in good shape. Never forget, they've got a job to do. They have to get these voters through without getting sued for voter intimidation and all that stuff. And you don't want to get sued for that either. You don't want to get sued for that. You don't want to get sued for filing frivolous challenges. And we'll talk more about challenges later. But this is about controlling your emotions, and I believe that's it. Let's see. Yeah, okay. Keep it cool. Keep it cool, baby. You want that limbic to be cool. You want that limbic to be a happy little camper just saying, hey, you might want to blink now, because you don't want that limbic to be going, yeah, it's game on. Let me squirt some more adrenaline here. This is fun. I mean, it's like a little demon in there, and you want to stop it. You want to breathe. I had something else to show you about that. Let me find it. Oh, man, I had a better slide. Let me just tell you. Where that limbic is, if I could draw a line through here and through here and through the top of my head, that's kind of where it is. The funny thing about it is the human body has this beautiful design where you have these things called sinuses, and the sinuses are right adjacent to the limbic, even though the sinuses are, there's a membrane between them. But the reason we say breathe, the nice slow breath through the nose, is because that air goes through your sinuses and actually acts like a radiator, as what a car would have on a car radiator. It's coolant. That air is coolant, because if you're starting to feel these things, these feelings of limbic hijacking, the way to calm it down, breathing, is so cool, because it actually provides some cooling air to your limbic. And worst case, you go out and you find if this happens at work, go find a dark room and take 5 minutes to really do some concentrated breathing. And these are kinds of things they do. There's a great book called The Relaxation Response. It's from the 60s, but it's not that kooky. Anyway, I mean, it's a good book that helps explain. It's a runaway bestseller that talks more about this process if this interests you. Now, I say all this. I know it's a long video. It's an introduction. You are embarking on a journey to be the first data point of entry to open and honest elections, where election officials say they have never seen evidence of it, of any kind of fraud. It's because they've never looked. It's because their employees, we'll get into that later, but it's their employees don't have an action to take when they see it. It's just, there's a whole lot of reasons behind this. In short, it's because the system is designed by people, and people are always trying to get one over on each other. And here we come in here. We want to know what happens when the game is rigged by the referee. And it is my impression that, depending on where you live, to a greater or lesser degree, it is being rigged by the referee. Those are my referees, though. Are they? Are they for honest elections, or are they cheating for their party? And this is, people go, come on, man. Okay, call me an ideologist, an idealist. Honest elections are in everybody's best interest. So control your emotions, be the best observer you can be, and we will give you some tools to do that. And we'll go over those as we go through this. So for now, I want to get your attention with the film, with some of the clips of the film we've seen in the past. Take a look at the montage we have. There's a couple of montages on our site, and I'll go back through. One's called Piece of Paper, and the other's called She Voted for a Man. Take a look at those videos. And if you still want to be an election observer, we will teach you what to do when stuff goes sideways, like it did for those people in those films. Okay, for now, pardon the long introduction, but you got it.